Hello and welcome back to her Gypsy Soul podcast, The Stories That Bind Us. My name is Jacqueline Van Beek. I am your host. I am a singer, songwriter, music composer. I love people and having conversations and sharing stories with people. And my dog loves to drink water whenever I talk on camera. That's just what he does. Who could stop him? Who should stop a thirsty dog from drinking? So, as I've told you maybe beforehand, I wanted to share some Otto's daughter stories because we have so many stories. The band I was in, for those of you who don't know, I used to have a band called Otto's Daughter. We were electronic pop metal. We started out kind of being industrial gothy. And I had this band for a long time and it's undergone many changes, but I wanted to kind of start from the beginning and introduce some members that started the band with me and were there in the early days of Otto's Daughter. And so I'm super stoked and excited to have today's guest with me, the one and only HH Gadget, who started Otto's Daughter with me. We started the band together after I couldn't find a band that I wanted to join and he couldn't find anything that he was happy with. And we were like, let's do the band together. So with no further ado, we're going to share some stories and rehash some old, memories and kind of go with the flow. I didn't want to plan it too much because, sometimes fun stuff comes out when it's not expected or not planned. So with no further ado, here's Gadget. Hello, Mr. Gadget. How are you?
Hey, Jacqueline. How you doing?
Good. It's been a minute. I thought it would be so much fun to talk about some of our old Otto's Daughter days, how we started, which I think was pretty funny, actually, and such a growth process because we didn't know shit at the time, And I mean, so we'll start there. Just tell people a little bit about, where we started and we'll go from there. All I have to say is lightning rig.
Well, why don't you start out? What is your recollection of how it started? I want to say 95.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. Actually, we got married at 95. And we started the band and we didn't want anyone to know that we were together, which is kind of funny because everybody kind of knew. But back in the days, it was not cool, right? It was like, don't tell nobody that they're together in a band. It's not good for the band. It, might not get a record deal, all that kind of stuff. I remember I don't remember the guy's name, but there was a guy who was singing like this all the time. And I said, Gadget, you should like drum for him. He needed a drummer. And so you played with him for a while. I don't remember the name of the band. Remember who I'm talking about?
His name was Mike, but I don't remember the name of the band.
Long black hair. And he was always kind of like a little bit like...
Ramones looking.
Yeah. And then I was trying to find a band and I went on some auditions, but I couldn't find a band. And you were not too happy with your band either. And then I started going to a producer. We both started going to producer at first and kept dropping a lot of money somewhere uptown, remember, like Upper West Side. And after an EP, I think we did like Insane and like a couple other songs. I didn't even like him that much. I don't think we ever even released those. And you did Laundry. I don't know if I was with you. And then you met Cedric. And that's how it all started, where we were like, we should get our own computer and start recording ourselves and start saving money. And we're more in control because I didn't like something with the producer and there were only so many things I was allowed to change. Otherwise I had to pay more money. And I was like, this sucks. This is very expensive. And then that's how it started. And then we hooked up with Cedric and Tom. Remember Tom?
God, yeah, and we stayed up till like 2 or 3 in the morning trying to get computers to work to record and went to some, I don't know, music I don't know, exposés is the right word, but where vendors would, you know, talk about new products and the new concept of recording on computers. And I actually still talk to the guy that introduced us to Cubase at Samash Pro.
Wow.
And he's still in the industry, and so am I. We still talk. Guy named Fady. He's now at SSL, Solid State Logic. But yeah, so we started recording and doing late nights with Tommy and Cedric, geeking out on computer stuff, trying to get it to work. And then we got that studio. You remember how much that studio used to flood?
Not a little bit.
Yeah, remember we had to raise the floor. It was in Union City.
Yes.
And we had to raise the floor up because it would, every time it rained, it would flood. And then that one time it flooded so much that the basement had like 3 feet of water in it. And a crazy dude that owned it, you know, and then at some point, you know, I think, because I was thinking about this when you mentioned you wanted to talk about some of the more humorous things that happened. So one of the earlier funny things that I remember is at some point I had switched to electronic drums.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some reason but I remember we were like, you wanted lighting. So I started making these horrible lighting boxes for you to stand on.
Yes.
And I was working at Home Depot during the daytime. So I had access to all the stuff. And we would build these lighting boxes and that you would fall through them because they weren't strong enough. And then some point, for some reason, I decided it would be a good idea to do flash pots, which is a kind of pyro. You remember those?
Yes.
And I think Jim had just joined the band. So we were probably a couple of years into it at that point. And everyone thought, you know, that it were super dangerous and all that. And I was like, no, no, no. So I went outside with a flash pot and put like twice as much gunpowder as you're supposed to into it.
You're always crazy like that.
Just to demonstrate how safe it would be. And I remember I like blew it up in my face and burnt off my eyebrows and my hair. Oh yeah, that was a good start. And then I think Jim's first show was oh God, I forget the name of the club.
In New Orleans.
No, I thought his first show was at in New York.
Connection. Was it Connection?
It was the one, I can't remember.
With Coil.
Maybe. And there's somewhere there was video of it. And it was a pretty packed club, and I had the pyro set up, but it was the first show he played with us where they had the pyro set up, and I had the whole thing complicated set up on MIDI so it would automatically go off. And I had warned Jim not to stand next to the drum set. And I remember he was leaning over towards me, and you know, our background tracks are going and it's really loud on stage. We haven't actually started playing yet. The intro's going. And Jim leaned over the kit to ask me something. And I remember like waving him, like, get away from the kit. And then, you know, and he was just like, what? He just leaned in even further. And then all the flash pots went off in his face. And I think he was blind for the first song or two of the set. So poor Jim. So yeah, I blew him out with that. So there was the flash pots, but I think one of the funniest things that I remember happening, and I think we were playing 2 or 3 shows over a couple of days, and we were doing Philly and then Pittsburgh and someplace else. And we were in Jim's Undestroyable GMC Safari van. And we rented a U-Haul truck that we're towing, or whatever. We were towing something from U-Haul that we had all our gear in. And I remember I think Jim was driving, although maybe I was. So one of us was driving. I think we were both up front. And I noticed in the rearview mirror that there was smoke coming out of the back.
I remember that.
And I remember saying, hey, guys, I think there's smoke coming out of the back. And you guys are like, oh, you always worry so much. You're such a worrywart. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure there's smoke coming out. And you guys were like busting my chops or always being worried. And so I'm like, okay. And then I looked, you know, we kept driving and I looked up and then there was like fire coming off the wheel. And I'm like, hey guys, so yeah, it's like on fire. The back of the trailer's on fire. And Jim's like, oh, I don't think so. Or I forget exactly. It was, again, you guys were trying to make it sound like I was making a big deal. I'm like, no, I'm serious. It's on fire. And then you guys looked, you're like, holy shit, it's on fire. And so Jim went to pull off the freeway, and I think it was right by the Philadelphia Zoo, if I remember. And then right when he's pulling off the freeway, like the axle just broke off and it just crunched into the ground with all our gear in it. And I think we had just left a show. So we were all kind of tired. It was like early in the morning. We all wanted to take a shower and chill. And so I think, was it Kyle came?
We were crashing at Kyle Cassidy's because I went ahead and did a photo shoot while you guys were like trying to get help.
Yeah. So somebody came and picked everyone else up. And then I think it was Jim and I were there. I might have misremembered it. And we had to stay for the tow truck. And then they sent a tow truck that wasn't a flatbed that couldn't lift the trailer. And then they finally did it. And we ended up the next morning at U-Haul, moving all the gear into the new trailer. And then we finally made it to you guys. And I think it was just in time for us to grab you and drive to Pittsburgh with no sleep. But I remember that was pretty stereotypical, band experience where you're driving around and you're on a shoestring and shit's going wrong. And then I mean that was one of my more humorous memories. I guess the other one, and I know this is on tape somewhere, and it was Dean Ogden's dad was filming us when we moved to LA, if you remember.
Oh yes.
And it was, I don't know what he was doing, but he was filming us all the time while we were just going about rehearsing or hanging out. And do you remember the keyboard rest that was like soft and you would put your wrists on it when you were typing on the keyboard?
Oh yeah.
And I would start.
You would smack people with it.
Well, yeah, the fabric started coming off. And then one day I finally realized I just ripped the fabric off because I wanted to see what it was. And it was like this really long, rubbery, stretchy thing, like really stretchy. And so I would start fucking with Chimpo or Garrison or, whoever was in the room. And I'd try to whack him with it because it would stretch out like 6 feet. Like, yeah. And then when it hit something, it would stick. So I was screwing around with Chimpo, like trying to whack him with it. And like he grabbed an end of it and ran outside of the rehearsal, garage, ran out into the yard, and we both had an end of it. We're running away from each other, and it's getting longer and longer as we're both running away. And I think we both looked at each other and like had the same thought at the same time. And I let go of it, and it like a rubber band, it just snapped at him. And he looked at me with like for a split second, like, and then he like tried to jump up in the air to jump over it coming at him, and it hit him right in the nuts. I mean, just right in the nuts, spun him in the air. And I'm telling you, it's on film. I was so pissed that we were never able to get that footage.
Oh shit.
Talk about one of those moments in life that you really wish.
I know.
And Chimpa was, I guess it bruised his testicles for like a week. He couldn't walk that well. It really hurt him bad. So that was also one of my more favorite memories. And then of course
so much crazy shit. We did so much crazy shit.
The dead arm boxing, you remember that?
The what?
Dead
arm boxing. Yes, I remember that. We all be like.
And Chimpa was fearless, and he would do it with Garrison. You remember Garrison? His arms were bigger than my legs. He was a big guy, and he'd always hit Chimpa, and he'd just be like, he'd win out there. And I think it was my turn, and we were going to do a show outside. I don't know if it was the Roxy or the Whiskey. And we were standing outside kind of waiting for our turn on stage, and it was my turn. So I went to get Chimpo, and the problem is, of course, I'm so short, and I'm usually hitting him like right above the hip and like cracking my wrist on their hip bone. So I decided it'd be a good idea to jump up in the air doing the dead arm boxing. And of course, I ended up hitting the back of his neck like really hard. And he just, he flinched and he went beet red. And, you know, a couple of tears came out. I was like, dude, you dick. So most of the stuff that I can think of that was funny is kind of like you had to be there stuff. But
definitely,
you know, those were for me the highlight reels. You know, there was the constant bickering between you and me, which in retrospect is funny. You know, you were always yelling for more me in the headphones, and I was always yelling that it was all the way up and you needed to sing closer to the mic.
I always hated those fucking things. I could never quite, I don't know.
And I'd beg Chimpo or Garrison to jump in and be like, look, explain to her what I'm talking about. And they'd all like, not being recorded.
That's you guys. Like, we're not gonna get in the middle of this. I know. I totally forgot about that. I hated those things. I loved them, but I hated them because because it always sounded like I'm in the recording studio. You know, I didn't feel like I was actually like playing live, and I don't know. I could never get used to them. You know, what I wanted to talk about too is like, remember when we first started out, we had like so many crazy people auditioning and joining us, and they never quite worked out. We settled for like the shittiest, like, remember that guy, Phil? He was not a shitty person, but like Phil we used to pick him up, then drive him back home. He had a loft in Manhattan somewhere. It was like a commercial space. Remember him?
Yeah, and he was like buddies with somebody who was famous that was tied to like Jimi Hendrix or something like that.
I remember.
But I will tell you the best short-term member story that I can remember, and I can't remember his name, and God bless his heart, he was as good a sport as any human ever could have been. But there was a song we had that I had come up with a sound by taking a metal vibrator and running it on the guitar. And he kept asking during the rehearsals how we got that sound. And I kept telling him, and he'd look at me. He's like, well, I'm not getting one of those. And I'm like, well, you're in New York. Just grab one in a sex shop. It's just a metal vibrator and you just use it on the guitar. And he kept putting it off and he kept putting it off. And I think it was at our first show where CJ set the lights up in front of the band. Remember that?
You have to tell that story. That was so amazing.
But so it was already a disaster with that going on. And then what was his name?
Bob? Are you talking about Bob?
Bob, yes, Bob.
The guitarist? Yeah.
And so Bob shows up to the gig.
Oh, I remember that.
and he I don't remember exactly the details, but he pretty much, I think, came over to me and had a duffel bag. And he's like, well, I got one. I hope you're happy. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, I got a dildo. And I'm like, it's a vibrator, first of all, dude. And then he pulls this giant rubber cock and balls out of the duffel bag. And I looked at it, and this is right before we're going to play. And I'm like, that's not going to vibrate. It's going to muffle the strings. And I think it was our last song in the set. And he broke it out. And like, obviously it didn't work. It was just, you know, deadening the guitar. And then at the end of it, somebody said something. I think people were making fun of him in the crowd or something was going on, because at the end of the song, he got so pissed. I remember he threw it and stomped off. And that was the last time we ever saw Bob. He pulls a giant rubber dildo with balls. You totally missed the point, dude.
That was Bob when we went shopping for food, and remember they trying to scan, and he put it all in the bag. He just skipped the scanner, and the lady's like, "Excuse me, I have to scan your food first." Oh, I'm sorry. He was not quite there. Yeah. But God bless his heart. I don't think he's alive anymore, right?
I don't know. Did he pass?
I think he had a motorcycle accident or something.
Oh, he was, like I said, he was a good soul.
He was a good soul. He was really fun. I remember he was really funny. He was funny as fuck. But then we had, remember Jeffrey?
barely. Was he the
You
first?
cannot not remember Jeffrey.
Was he
Jeffrey
the
the
first
rock
heroin
star.
addict?
Jeffrey the rock star, who was like, looked like he plays an orgy, and he was like promoting us everywhere. He was really gothy, and he was really drunk and got drunker every time he came to rehearsal. And then we threw him off the stage at downtime.
Mm-hmm.
You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember. I barely remember.
Oh my God. That was like when Otto's daughter got like banned in several clubs. Like I had to go and apologize for him because he walked into downtime. Neville was working at downtime. He walked into downtime with a bottle of, I don't know, vodka or something, and put it on the bar. And they're like, can you tell your guitarist to take his liquor out of the bar? Like, you know.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Remember? Yeah. And then we started playing, and I was like, I'm not ready, or something was not ready, the sampler or something. And you were like, hold on. And then he's like, fuck this. And he started playing.
I remember what happened.
What happened?
He was, you know, we had the crazy.
And he cut himself. He cut himself right before.
Yeah, so there was some argument, and he borrowed CJ's knife and used it to cut himself all over his chest because he was so goth or whatever.
So goth, yeah.
And he was, I'm guessing he was high on heroin. He was certainly at least drunk, and probably high on heroin. And he was kind of all like, ugh. And we get on stage, and Jeffrey is, give me a minute. Jeffrey is tuning his guitar. And if you remember, we had this huge setup on stage, and everything was a rush to get everything set up to play. And he's still tuning his guitar. And then
that's what it was. Yes.
And then we're, you know, so everyone's got all their stuff set up, and now the club's getting mad that we haven't started yet. And he's still tuning his guitar.
That's how it was. Yeah.
I think he was still on his E string. He hadn't even got past. And then finally, I remember CJ came over. It was either CJ or the gentleman that was the keyboardist. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Paul.
Paul, yeah.
It
was either Paul or CJ, but one of them leaned over to me because we're, you know, I'm at this point, we're like, fuck it, we got to play or they're going to.
It was Paul. Paul was like, should we just start?
And then Paul's like, what should we do? And I was like, just pull out the pull out the cord from his amp and we'll just play. So we just said, fuck it. And we started the song. And, you know, meanwhile, he's all of a sudden realizing we were playing a song and can't get any sound. And that's when he like threw a fit and jumped off stage and just, did the bouncer throw him out? We got the bouncer to pick him up and carry him out.
But wait, it was, so he was still playing. What happened is he was playing we started and he was really pissed. And I forget, 1, 2, 3, I think that was the song we started with. And he just started playing random noise. And
he plugged his guitar back in. He figured out I think I unplugged his guitar.
Yeah.
But he figured it out, plugged back in, and he was just making random noise. And then we finished the song and he was still going.
No, during the song, we told the sound guy, cut him off. And then he did. And he ran off stage, attacked the sound guy, and jumped back on stage. And that's when Paul was like, should I get the security guy? Yeah. We're like, yes, please. And we were like, oh shit, we don't have any guitars on the backing tracks. And we just started adding a lot of guitars, and we just like, okay, everybody, you all witnessed this. Like, we don't have a guitarist now. And then everybody chanted, fuck Jeffrey. And oh my God. And then we were like, fuck it. We're just going to play without the guitars. And
I remember from the drum set, I could see the bouncer like carrying him out with the guitar. And then I looked at Paul and I was like, well, and Paul had I think he had one rehearsal with us, if that. And I was like, Paul, can we play? And he's like, well, I got 2 hands, mate, which was the classic Spinal Tap's reference. And so we just played through the set. But yeah, that was Jeffrey. I forgot about that insanity. So yeah, we went through a lot of real winners.
And it sucked because we so badly wanted to play downtime, and we had a huge crowd, and we were so happy that we played that club, and then there's this huge crowd and that shit happens. And I think everybody looked at us like, what the fuck is going on, you know? But then they realized, holy shit, they just threw their guitars out. This was not a show. This was actually not planned. This is like, and then Jeffrey kept texting us or calling us, and we were like, dude, what did you say? I'm gonna drop your shit up on 42nd and somewhere. If you're there, pick it up. If not, I don't give a fuck. Like, pick your shit up. Because he kept like, we used to have a guest book on our website, and he would always like pretend to be somebody else and say, where's Rockstar Jeffrey? What happened to Jeff? We missed Jeffrey. And I'm like, dude, you weren't even in a band for like a month or 2 months or something.
He was a bit of a wanker.
Oh my God. And what about Russell, when we said we're going to be like really industrial, make yourself, so we had our first show at the Spiral Lounge. Remember that?
That's the one with the rubber dildo and CJ setting the lights up in front of the crowd.
Oh my God. And we showed up there and they all looking at us like, who the fuck are these people? Like, it's a Spiral Lounge and they're acting like they're playing Madison Square Garden. We had like a light box. We had all these lights and we blinded the crowd. They couldn't even see us.
Yeah, that was our first gig with CJ helping us out.
But we had a lighting guy.
Yeah, we did.
And Cedric played with us because he was just like helping us so much with the computers. And then he was like, hey, if you need someone to play keys for you, I'll play for you, you know? And then
remember you made him dress up and he got that that rubber shirt.
Yes. That black rubber shirt.
Didn't he get stuck in it or something?
He was like sweating his ass off. He's like, man, this is fucking nasty. Yeah, he got it.
Like ripped his chest hair out or something.
And then Russell shows up and he had like, that was like our first bass player, right? Was he the first player?
God, Russell. I forgot about Russell.
I know. And he shows up. He's like, yeah, I'm going to wear latex. We're like, cool. And then he had like, 5 stripes of latex on his body. We're like, what the hell is this?
Oh, he got the paint on latex. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I remember that. And that was the Brazilian wax to remove it. So
you can't make that shit up. That was the weirdest guy too, because he was a really cool dude, but he would hardly ever talk, right? Russell,
yeah, he didn't talk much.
Oh my God. And then we played, I remember I had this awesome dress made. I had like a bunch of outfits made by this amazing clothing designer, Andre. Did you ever come with me? I don't remember Andre.
Yeah, I remember.
Right? And he was amazing. And we played this amazing club. I don't remember where that was, but I had my mermaid dress on and we were all like decked out and there were like 5 people there or something, or 10 people. Like, oh, this sucks. It was like some goth night.
Then there was that club in the meat market that I can't remember the name. Mother. And we got there early to load in, and the guy greets us at the door, and we chat, blah blah blah, and he's like, okay, well, follow me, and he turns around and he's wearing assless chaps and nothing else, and I'm standing there going, okay. That kind of night. And then the act before us was like they tied the dude to the cross and were like bleeding him, and like the blood was getting all over our gear, and I remember I was freaking out, like I don't want blood all over my gear, I don't want my own blood, let alone other people's blood. That was a freaky club. I remember.
Yeah. I love that club though, because we didn't have to get our own crowd. There was a building crowd. We got paid a little bit of money, and the crowd was pretty receptive. They were like really cool, I like the fact that, we were both kind of into vampires at the time, and I think we liked the whole like.
It was you, to your point. The crowd is into it. They were there to have fun. They weren't judgmental, and like you said, it didn't hurt to get paid a little. But yeah, it was a receptive crowd, and that wasn't always the case. We played upstairs at it was a famous club, and then it got turned into a dance club. And
Webster Hall.
Yeah, we played upstairs at Webster Hall. And
Was it the Blade Runner show or something, right?
it was horrible because we got to the stage and they had one speaker that was hanging over the bar. That was the PA system. And then we showed up. I mean, we had more speakers of our own that we used for monitor wedges than they had for an actual PA system. And it was so, I'm surprised Sebastian didn't remember this one. It was so quiet on stage because I play electronic drums at the time that I remember Sebastian just came over and leaned on the drum set and started talking to me at this volume of voice while we're playing. He's like, hey man, so, I'm just watching you and counting off of that because I can't hear anything. And I'm like, I know, me neither. I can't really hear anything. And it's like, it's really noisy outside, but there's no PA system. You remember that? And then we had to haul our crap up like 6 flights of stairs. And then they rushed us right out of there.
I don't remember that. I remember what I was wearing for whatever weird reason. Like I had my white boots on and a white dress. That's all I remember. But I do remember in the beginning, we would call it the fridge because you were really into, I always admired that because you were like programming everything, I didn't even know how to use that shit. And you were like, I got this. Like you were using a sampler. And so we called it the fridge. Every time we would play a show, that thing was heavy as fuck. So we would we would be almost envying the other people in the club because we're like, man, they just show up with a guitar and here we are we're schlepping all this shit with us, just like, but we needed it. It was kind of part of who we were. And that's what made us so different.
Well, I mean, back then there were not computers that were remotely powerful enough to take on a stage, let alone reliable enough. And the sampler was our workaround. And at that point we had, the most automated unsigned band live show ever, where we had automated lights, automated pyro, automated vocal effects, automated guitar effects, automated bass effects, plus the backing tracks all run from that sampler. The thing was great. It was the one piece of gear we had that almost never failed us, except for at one time we played a show. Irving Plaza. Yeah. And the power went out. And I even was so anal, I had put a battery backup in the fridge to protect that from happening. But it spiked so hard it blew the UPS, and right in the middle of the first song, everything died. All the backing tracks, everything died because the sampler had to reboot. And I remember that might have been one of Jim's earlier shows with us. I forget. There was somebody that was new in the band, and they were like, I remember everyone, because again, it was so quiet on the stage because I'm playing plastic, thwack, thwack, thwack.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that was the most cringe-worthy moment ever in any show we ever played, because Irving Plaza was a big venue, and I thought we were really ready to do a great job at that place. And
I know, and it was the opening song. It was the most sample-heavy song. I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Where we had that main bass line was like the sample, and we were like, oh, shit.
In fact, now that we bring that up, I remember I threw my drumsticks at the sound guy because he was doing such a bad job. Like, we requested like, hey, don't, I just need the bassist in my wedge or whatever. And I remember the wedge was so loud, it was like distorting, like,
yeah.
Couldn't hear anything. And I'm waving to the guy, and he was in a booth on the side of the stage, and he was like eating a cheeseburger. I don't know what the food, not paying attention. I remember I threw my sticks at him. Yeah, that gig sucked. But I did remember the all-time funniest thing, and the reason why I became instant best friends forever with Chimpo is that we moved to LA, and I got the job at Guitar Center to quickly find musicians for the band that didn't move with us. And we had put some want ads out, and we were getting the same old loser tribe that we'd gotten on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and I figured, what better place to find musicians than a Guitar Center? And so that's where we found Garrison. And I remember Chimpo kept asking me, hey, man, I play bass. I want to try out. I want to try out. And I was just like, well, do you have a bass? And he's like, well, no, but I can get one. And so finally, I think we agreed to do it. I didn't know the guy that well, but I'm finally like, okay, cool. So, you know, and I gave him that song. And I said, you need to learn the one we were just talking about. What was it? Stuck. And it, you know, it's got the pretty wacky bass line. And so I gave it to him, and I'm like, you need a 5-string to get the low notes. And he's like, okay. And so he borrowed a 5-string from Guitar Center when we were at work, brand new in the box, shows up at rehearsal with the guitar still brand new in the box. And the thing about guitars, if you know about guitars, is they generally need to be set up. And this particular, I think it was an Ibanez, was a really inexpensive one and a 5-string to boot. So when he went to tune it, the low string was just rattling on the frets. And so we start, you know, he's screwing around trying to tune it and bitching about it. And I'm like, fuck this, let's just get the rehearsal over with and move on. And so he starts playing and it's just, the string is just so loose. It's just laying on the frets and rattling. And I'll never forget this. One of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. You know, he takes the bass and it's this big, huge 5-string neck and he can't get it to play. And then he just flips it face down in front of him and starts playing it and humping it at the same time. So he's fucking the bass while he's playing this bass line. And then with that fucking chimpo shit-eating grin on his face while he's playing it. And I remember I fell off the drum set. I don't think I've laughed that hard in my life. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And we got to the end of it and he's like, what'd you think? I'm like, oh God, you're totally in the band. How could you not? That was the funniest thing I've ever fucking seen. I mean, I talk about, you know, it totally his personality, like just not giving a fuck and just having fun with it. Just Jesus. And I guess, again, one of those moments in life you wish you had video because it's just, it'll never get out of my head on repeat of him just watching the bass.
He was always so funny. Like, oh my God, he was just one of those guys that just, I'm like, can you be serious for like 1 minute? He's like, huh? What?
And he's still that guy. That's him through and through.
That's awesome, though. That is so awesome.
So
I'm telling you, like, we could write a book about this because we haven't even gotten through, like, there's so many, like, people that came and left, you know. I was telling Sebastian, I almost forgot about Fred. Remember that guy, Fred, who was in the band for like a minute? Him and his wife, he had a wife, Rena. He made some flyers for us, some stickers for us. He had the spiky hair, red hair or something like that. I don't know. He had like a printing company.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, like it just came to me last night. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot all about that guy. And then Eric, remember Eric Filth?
Yeah, I remember Eric. And so have you talked to Paul at all?
Paul?
Yeah, the keyboardist.
English guy, Paul? No, I haven't. I need to get in touch with him.
I don't have his contact information, but I'm sure he's got some pretty fucking funny stories. And
I don't either. I don't remember his last name. That's the crazy thing, that there have been people in our band that I don't really remember at all, because they were like in it for a minute or so, you know. And like we said before, we had some pretty crazy people in the band. And I think when Dan and so Sebastian was like the most stable after Russell. I don't remember why Russell left. He was always kind of a little bit negative, I think, or depressed or something. I can't quite remember. And then we found Sebastian and his buddy James, who like took his shirt off. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
I remember James.
I can't play without my shirt. No, I can play with my shirt on. And then another really cool memory is, I think, when we all went to El Paso, you know, remember that?
Oh yeah, at the Sonic Ranch.
Yeah, when we had we worked with the first professional producer at the time. you know, Neil Kernan. And do you remember like when we were like done? Because first of all, I have to thank you because of you, I am producing and recording, you know, because you taught me all of that. Like I didn't, and I would always yell at you. I'm like, why do you have to buy this? Or why do you have to, you like, because you have to upgrade shit, you know, like it's a newer version. I could never understand that. And now I totally get it. I still laugh about it. Sometimes I'm like, man, I used to yell at you. I'm like, can't you just be happy with what you have? You're like, no, you have to upgrade it. But yeah, if it wasn't for you, I don't, you know, you really taught me how to do all that stuff, you know. And at the time, we both didn't really know what we're doing, but you were way more into it than me in the beginning, you know. And so Neil Kernan, I remember like on the way back home, I don't know if you remember that, I was so bummed because I was like, oh my God, it sounds like shit. The whole album sounds like shit. And you were like, because we haven't mastered it yet. But I think you were still tweaking a few things, no?
Who, Neil?
You, because
yeah, I tweaked a few things, and you and I had a huge disagreement about auto-tuning the vocals on one song on there.
I know. I wish I would have listened to you.
I can't remember if you're sharp or flat the whole song, but it was pretty off. And I remember I don't remember exactly what, but I remember having a discussion with Neil when you guys weren't in the room about that song. And I was a very vague memory, but I seem to remember being like, just let it go. Just let it go, man. Unless you want to fight it with her, let it go.
What song was that?
I don't know. We ended up never playing it live, I think.
Oh, Hail? Was it Hail? No. Because it's not, I think you tweaked it later on anyway, because there's
no, it went on the album out of tune.
Wait, was it 1, 2, 3 maybe, huh? No, he didn't do that. He did
an earlier album. No,
yeah.
I don't remember the song, but it was out of tune.
I know. I was out of tune a lot.
Well, and a certain amount of that is okay. I mean, that's part of artistic expression, but it was just the whole song was I think that you were flat the whole song. And I remember I kept trying to write a keyboard line for you to follow while you were singing to try to keep you in tune, because the sound of the synths were dragging you out of key or something like that. But I remember
it must have been Hail, because whenever we would rehearse it, I'll be always off.
No, Hail, I think I did some auto tuning without telling you on the recording.
I know. But I think live, like I think we played Hail, we were trying to play that and I could never sing. And then I would just get nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot. Just thinking about it, I'm already off.
Yeah, that was a tough song.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of it anyways, but.
and remember like how we made like these awesome sounds. I'm like, I mean, you will not believe like in this cool sound I made, like I used your green ashtray, and you're like, that was my mom's.
Oh, you mean broke my green ashtray to make the sound? Yeah, I remember.
And you were like, that's not cool. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
So yeah, we used to do some fun stuff, writing music with a half drunken can of Mountain Dew and some gear and playing with cords and cables. So I do miss the creative side of it. But the amount of time and effort to put into it, I just don't have in my life anymore. I have other things I pursue. Yeah. So, from having the kid to, having a wonderful relationship with my wife to my career during the day. It's a busy life. So we'll see. Maybe when my son's older, if he's interested, I'll dive back into it with him. Still have a little drum set here.
I saw that. Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's his drum set, and then mine's in the garage. And every once in a while, I can get him to play. But I'm not. I wouldn't wish music on my worst enemy as far as a career.
Well, I mean, those were great memories, and I think, again, like I think what was so cool in the early days of Otto's Daughter is that we did so many things that were just like happy accidents sometimes and very experimental. Like you recorded, we would reverse something, or like you recorded the people arguing in a hallway. What is that? What intro was that? That was on Void of Course.
I don't know, but I remember the girl had caught her boyfriend cheating on her, and she was yelling at him outside our studio. So I popped the door open and stuck a microphone out and recorded the whole thing. That was, I forgot about that. It was pretty funny.
And then I think you pitch shifted it and you reversed it or something. You did something.
I added some bit crushing and make it so that you couldn't tell that I obviously didn't want to violate anyone's privacy, but it sounded pretty great, her yelling at him, even backwards.
Right. Well, you've done some crazy shit because you were always like, yeah, I mean, you were such a big part of the band, first of all. Obviously we were the core members. We founded Otto's Daughter, but then also you did a lot of work. You were always in the studio mixing and working so hard, getting things right. And at some point you even got a job. I don't know if you can talk about that, but where you listened to conversations and you cleaned up conversations,
Yeah, no, that was actually through Cedric.
Yeah, I remember that.
And doing audio restoration for government cases. It was pre 9/11, and the government was still running on pretty old technology, so computers were just starting to be a thing. And so Cedric and I cooked up a scheme where we could use the computers of the time to do a better job doing audio restoration on these audio files that the government would take to trial than what was being offered out there, which wasn't very much. And it worked for a while. And then they asked me to start testifying at trials. And then one of them was a mob trial. And I'm like, being in the East Coast, I'm like, you know what? I don't want any part of this anymore. I'm not just not interested in even touching that subject. So I'm just gonna not do that. And then 9/11 happened, and the government obviously poured a ton of money into surveillance. So there wasn't really the need for it anymore.
Right.
So it was an interesting job, but the trial thing started being like, I don't think I want to be a witness at a mob trial. Thank you very much. Even just a unimportant technical witness, I don't want to do it. So
no, definitely not.
It wasn't exactly the most exciting work. A typical case could be 60 to 180 hours of audio that I would have to go through painstakingly. And it just, it sounded great up front, but after you're doing it day after day after day, it stopped being so much fun. Just, it wasn't anything like music. So I'm sure there's people that really, really love that stuff. And, being in music retail and studio design and installation now in my day job, I interface with all the manufacturers of all this stuff. And certainly the technology is like wildly leap years ahead. So, and I'm sure you even use some of the stuff out there, like the isotope stuff and all that. So,
yeah.
But what we were doing back then was super rudimentary by comparison.
Absolutely. Well, I like I told Sebastian, I'm so lucky that we got to be part of a history in New York that is no longer there, like CBGB's and the Continental, all these cool clubs, and that cool scene that we were still thankfully part of, that is gone. Just tell people what you do now and where they can find you, because you have your own, you freaking like the big shot now. You have your own business now. Tell people real quick before you go, and then they can find you and contact you if they need any gear.
Yeah, well, I work at Westlake Pro, and that's www.westlakepro.com. And we do retail. So we sell equipment, but we also design, consult, integrate on all types of specialty spaces, studios, screening rooms, edit bays. Basically, the term that I've come to describe it as specialty rooms. So, and oftentimes in a larger building, a company might be moving in and they want to deal with specialty rooms. So generally rooms that revolve around audio and video. So, from gear to, from actually just selling the boxes themselves to helping people understand what boxes to get, and putting these things together. That's what Westlake Pro does. And we actually have a location in Nashville now too, which is cool.
Oh, awesome.
I still haven't managed to get out there because, COVID last year, so no traveling yet, but I hope to go out maybe next year and see it. Work with a lot of good people. So it's been fun. And that company, that's what, 10 years, almost 9 years now. It's a great crew of people. It's a lot of fun, and it's not unlike a band. You're with your work family, and there's a lot of kidding around and ball busting and jokes, and everyone doing their best to do work and still have fun. So that's a whole nother set of insanity I could tell you about, going back from working crazy shit at Guitar Center to
I know
now. Talk about or remember when at the beginning when I worked at Home Depot, all those crazy things that happened there.
Oh my God, yes. I'm telling you that there's a whole book in there, like many more episodes, because there's a lot of interesting and fun stuff.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Yes, thank you for coming on, and it was really fun talking about these things, and we'll have to do it one more time again at some point, maybe with a bunch of other people, with Sebastian and the whole crew.
Yeah, no kidding, man. We totally should. You definitely want to get me and Chimpo on. That'll be a lot more funny than me by myself.
Okay. All right, you.
Good night.
Thank you for being on. Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye. Bye. As always, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. I know there's so many other things you could be doing with your time. There's so many things out there. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you liked it. If you liked it, subscribe, share with your friends. And these special episodes with Otto's daughter, at the end of this episode, you will hear an Otto's daughter song, and also a link to where you can get our songs if you're interested. From the very first album to the last album we did. And if you have any requests, let me know. There will be many more podcasts with the band. This is just the beginning. There's so many stories to talk about, and so many other people to bring on to share their point of view and their little time or longer time they were in the band, depending. But I hope you like this. Again, spread the word. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, my sun protective shawl is available at jackvanb.com. So make sure you check that out if you would like sun protection or stay cozy on the cooler summer, spring evenings. And with that said, have an amazing rest of the week, a great weekend, and I'll see you next Friday. Thanks, guys. I feel as cold as the stone on my grave. I've come to kiss you goodbye, touch your soft skin one last time as I drift, slowly shift underground. Stuck inside your world. Stuck inside your world. Stuck inside your world. I can stand it, I'ma stand it. I can stand it, I'ma stand it. You don't have to cry, I was dead alive. Now I'm the brightest star in the darkest sky. I'm everywhere, I'm everything. I am now you inside your skin. Forever and ever.
inside your world, stuck 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 inside.